Has Steph Curry found his stroke? Are the Cavaliers now the clear favorites for the title? Can the Bucks make some noise in the playoffs? The only question left is, say it with me, you win. Hey sports fans, Coach Nick here, and welcome to the B-Ball Breakdown Podcast. As always, I am joined by Coach Dave Dufour, and as always, we are doing this live on Periscope the night before on Sunday. So, Dave, how you feeling these days?
I'm good. I'm feeling real good.
You don't feel any older, huh?
No, not at all.
That's good.
I feel half my age. I'm good. I'm good to go.
You and Donald Trump feel half your age. That's terrific. And here, you're living clean, eating clean, right. All those things.
Yeah, that's right.
Nice. Well,
basketball keeps you young.
It does. It does, especially if you get out there on the court enough times. I feel like it's hard to do that sometimes. And I was trying to throw the football around with my kid this morning, and it was just like it hurts. I don't like when it hurts, but I can't go back. I can't feel the other way. I only can age, so we can fight that as much as we can. And let's not fight the conversation we're going to have today, which is about the NBA.
That's right. We really need to get after it. I know, probably a lot of people listening and watching on Periscope have been, their attention has kind of been on March Madness, and rightfully so, right? It's an American tradition. I read a really interesting thing. Did you know that March has 15% more vasectomies than any other month of the year?
I did not know that.
It's crazy, right? It's people time it so they can stay at home and watch the tournament. It's genius. I love it.
I don't understand. You mean because you're going to be laid up in bed for a little bit?
Yeah, you're going to sit around with ice for 2 days, It's a great time to watch the tournament. Your wife's not going to ask you to mow the lawn. The kids are going to leave you alone.
Make it off work.
Pretty good. That's my stat. That's my stat of the week.
All right.
15%.
Well, that's an interesting stat. Speaking of stats, we had Steph Curry really struggling and people clamoring for weeks for have me do a breakdown on it. And I finally got around to spending some time yesterday to go through a whole bunch of clips and figure out what was going on with him. And quite honestly, and what I said in the video, if you watched it, was, if you look at the footwork and the way he angles his feet and the way all that stuff works, there is no rhyme or reason. Because I can show you as many makes as misses with the same kind of wonky stuff, and it's almost hard to figure out. Although it does feel like he's hopping more recently than he ever has before. And my take on that was I actually had caught him rolling his ankle in Philadelphia several games ago, and no one reported it. No one said anything. In fact, Steph kept playing, but it looked like a pretty good tweak, and that explained why he was hurting when he ran into Elfrid Payton later on against the Magic. It didn't seem like anything, but he ran right to the locker room. So to me, that was already a tweaked ankle. So the idea being that if your ankles are bothering you and your feet are bothering you, then hopping probably is a good idea.
Yeah, absolutely. It will take some of that pressure off. You can make sure that you're getting your up on your toes. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. So is your theory that he's been hurt for a little while?
I think everyone's banged up and that whole kind of thing, and I don't want to get involved. People, when you start to talk about Steph and being hurt, it's a rage out there. So, but if you're looking for a reason why he's shooting, he was shooting 10% on transition open threes. It's insane. So if you're looking for a reason, I would certainly point to, that could be something. When your wheels are broken or your wheels aren't working right, it's hard. That's the one thing it's really not easy to do is shoot. But that said, he watched my video Saturday afternoon. And, because I recommended a couple different shots because we charted them all and looking at where he was missing most. Very tiny sample size, by the way, but still worth looking at. And he looked very spry. And I think it had to do with just getting a day off, being home, getting a day off, and just clearing your head.
Yeah, he goes 9 of 13, 6 of 8 from deep, 4 of 4 from the line, 28 points. That's tidy. That's some really tidy shooting. Yeah. And that's, a little bit more like what we're used to seeing out of him. But the bigger story to me is that Clay was also good. This is the first time in a while that they've both had a good shooting night in the same night. They've gone back and forth a few times. Of course, Steph, I think, was struggling a little bit more than Clay. Clay had that amazing game against the Magic earlier in the week. So this to me was important. I think it was important for them to both kind of go off. Draymond does Draymond things, and they blew out the Bucks. So I mean, I think hopefully this is the sign. They're turning the corner, and Steph is kind of bouncing back.
And also, they're turning the corner of maybe just finally adjusting, to not having Kevin Durant there, and they're kind of getting their role set up again. And so, that's the thing. But Steph just looked spry. He looked energetic. It was like I hadn't seen him do that either in a long time. And it's good to see. It's fun because it kind of reminds you that he really is. One of the best players we have in the game, and an all-time great. Like someone was even saying, like all he is a shooter. But I'm like, okay, if he's all he is a shooter, then he is the best shooter we've ever had, ever. We've never seen this before, and I almost feel like at this point they're just desensitized. They don't like his. I don't know. It's weird that people react so negatively to a guy that just celebrates after making threes. James Harden doesn't get that kind of hate, does he? For this first story in the pot, does he?
I like to see guys enjoying themselves when they're playing. This whole idea that you've got to be, yes, Kawhi Leonard is a robot, right? And Kawhi Leonard doesn't smile when he does stuff. I mean, Kawhi dunked on 2 guys in like the span of a minute and a half last week, and you would never have known it.
Right.
And that's fine for Kawhi Leonard. It's just like Barry Sanders used to just hand the football to the ref. But I also liked it when Emmitt Smith would spike the football. To me, it's as long as you're not. You know what? Screw it. I don't care. Show up your opponents. If they don't like it, they need to stop you. Right. It's like the bat flip in baseball. If you don't want a guy flipping the bat, 500 feet in the air, well, don't give up a home run.
Right. I mean, well, yeah, I hear you. And by the way, he can do that. And in baseball, there's a natural balance where he'll just get it in the ear the next time. So that's okay.
Right.
That's what he understands. But same in basketball, you do a couple of those things. They'll set a hard screen or they'll take a foul or whatever. It's all part of the balance. I don't have a problem with it. But I don't know. I just like enjoying supreme skill. And it's something about that just makes me excited. And I don't understand why, it has to be that way. And, there's probably a lot of deep layers involved in this that we don't have to get into at this point. But certainly there's stuff that, like, out of Steph's control, it feels like that, that he makes him a target, unfortunately. But either way, it kind of puts them back in the conversation for where they can now, like, I don't know, right now, without Kevin Durant, do they beat the Cavaliers in the finals? What do you think?
I think it's tough. They just don't have any depth at all. And, I mean, he makes up for, like, 4 guys.
Right. And
without him, I think they're hurting. I mean, that's what we've seen over the last few weeks. I think that we can point to that as the source of the real struggle. It's not that Clay and Steph just aren't hitting shots. They had, when they go to the bench, they're going to they're starting Pat McCaw,
right.
Matt Barnes is 38 years old, or is 37 or 38 years old. He's past, his great days. I just think that's the bigger issue is depth. And so without KD, you're basically sliding guys up a slot that really aren't Pat McCaw's not a starter in the NBA. So no wonder they're struggling a little bit.
Right. Although I do like a little bit what I've seen. He seems like aggressive on offense a little bit. He's doing defensive plays nicely. So this is actually going to help them. And I'm sure, like we talked about adversity with Steve Kerr, this is the kind of stuff that will really help them in the playoffs now that Pat McCaw is going to have more. And he has to. He had to have gotten more experience if he was going to help them at all. So it's good for him, I think. I would imagine that this is going to benefit them. Ian Clark seems like he knows what's up. He'll be able to handle, his role in the playoffs as well. Certainly David West will be, he'll be there and know how to handle that stuff. So, it might not be as bare as it seems, but it's a little bit precarious. Certainly without Kevin Durant, they are mortal. But everything seems to indicate that Durant will be back, and maybe he'll be healthy by then.
Yeah, I think that's what everyone is hoping. I don't know, man. The knee stuff really, really scares me with any of these guys. It's like a foot problem. Steph last year in the playoffs, I think he came back too early. And by too early, I mean like 6 weeks too early.
Okay.
A sprained MCL, that's 3 months typically. And, I don't care what they say. He was not Steph Curry. He wasn't the Steph Curry that we saw all season when he was playing in the playoffs. And this isn't a knock on the Cavs, and you still got to win the games, but that Steph Curry was still hurt. So I hope he comes back and is healthy. And again, if it takes sitting out that first round, I think that the Warriors are fine against Portland or Denver. The problem is if they aren't the 1 seed, in San Antonio's right there with them neck and neck. And if the Warriors are the 2 seed, they're playing Memphis, and that has been a horrific matchup for them. That'd be a really tough series.
Yeah. I mean, they don't have. Zaza can guard Marc Gasol, I suppose, but probably gets into foul trouble that way. And then you got JaVale, who probably is not going to be able to handle that. And then, I would like David West versus Zebo would be really fun to watch. I mean, heck, and I wonder how they do that because we've seen, that would basically the starting lineup, they'd end up forcing Durant. Zebo's not starting now. So you get a chance to get David West against Zebo. That would be a really fun, matchup to watch.
Yeah, it would. And then, Tony Allen is, who does he guard? He probably guards Clay. I don't remember. And Conley has done a pretty good job guarding Curry. So I think that for the Warriors, it's much more important for them to get the 1 seed than it is for the Spurs. And the way the Spurs have been playing the last few games, it almost feels like they don't want the 1 seed.
Right.
Because I think that they would probably rather play Memphis, which a little bit easier, slower. Whereas Denver and Portland, I wonder if Pop thinks about the long-term effects of having a series against a team that plays at that sort of pace.
Sure. Although I do think that maybe they're looking beyond that. It doesn't feel like they'd be that concerned in that first round either way. The Spurs would be. But it's then it's the next round where they'd be playing either 3 or 6 and supposed to 4 or 5. That's interesting. A very interesting question. So I don't know. I don't know what to make of that.
Yeah, I don't know.
Now,
Now, Ethan Sherwood-Strauss on the True Hoop podcast, we haven't talked about this on the podcast, but he sort of confirmed my suspicions that there are some potential locker room issues going on with the Warriors.
Yeah, right. What did he confirm?
Well, he talked about how much they miss Luke Walton, and it's tough. It's tough for them to get the. I think Luke's job as the relationship guy. They started 39-4 with him. They were playing a much more free brand of basketball. The guys were very open, and we saw the stuff last year with the Draymond Green blow up against Oklahoma City with the shouting match in the locker room.
Yeah.
That was with Kerr, and so he and Kerr have a kind of a contentious relationship. I think that they respect each other. I'm sure they like each other, but I think, like Ethan Strauss said, that they are really missing Luke Walton in the locker room.
Yeah, and that's an amazing intuition because no one was saying that before you started saying it. So, props to you on getting in touch with that kind of side because you're right. I mean, that is the role of the assistant coach. And again, it kind of is a backhanded slap at like Mike Brown or anybody else who's on that staff who, needs to step up in that role then, although it's not something you can always easily do. And Luke was, a little bit younger, had played in the league, and just sort of had that thing. And it could just be alchemy. Like he just clicked. But I do remember that with Draymond, and remember Draymond just freaking out. And I still can't really understand what it is. There must be something that Steve Kerr does, like communication-wise. It just gets on Draymond's nerves, I guess, because it's certainly not a minutes or a role, right?
No, one of the things that Luke Walton did last year, assistant coaches they rebound for these guys. They're working them out, they're warming them up. And when Luke was the head coach, for the first half of the season, well, he was still doing that stuff too. And I think that that's important to the players. Like if you go work a guy out, it's different than just being their coach.
Yeah.
Like I have players that I coach and I have players that I train and coach. And I have a different relationship with the kids that I work with outside of practice. It's just that's natural. We spend more time together. The one-on-one time, you have a chance to really like get to know someone personally. You joke around a little bit more. There are things like that. You're experimenting more. I think that is a large part of it. And maybe Steve Kerr needs to like just start rebounding for Draymond. I don't know if his back will let him. But you've got to find a way to be relatable. And I think Steve Kerr is an extremely relatable human being. And he talks a lot about, how they need to be playing with joy and all this stuff. Although I actually haven't heard that as much out of him this year as I heard the previous 2 years.
Interesting.
So I wonder if there's just a little bit of, I don't know. I don't know. I'm not in the locker room. I'm just projecting. I like Steve Kerr as a person and a coach. I think he's a decent coach, and obviously they're a great team. And so I don't want to see relationship stuff cause them to not reach their peak potential.
Right. And winning hides a lot of things. And so when you're 50-10, any kind of issues that might be around just sort of are under the surface and don't bother anybody generally. And then you get a little adversity, like we mentioned last podcast, and like here we are. But we'll have to see how they can get this ironed out, and if Steph can step up and make the winning kind of hide that stuff again, then they'd be in better shape. But if we're talking about winning, then we've got to mention Harry's Razors, a place to get high quality razors to shave your face. And if you're like Dave and need to shave your dome, they've got a special razor for that too. The trial set came to my door in a cool package with shaving gel, 4 razors, an easy-to-hold handle, and an even cooler story about their founders, Jeff and Andy, who literally bought their own factory to make razors for $2 a blade, half of what you'd pay when going through the hassle of driving to the drugstore, waiting for the dude to open up the special locked case, since I guess there's a black market for stolen razor blades or something, and that's if you even remember to buy them while you're getting shampoo and soap and everything else. So head over to harrys.com/CoachNick and you'll get their trial set for free. There's a small shipping fee and you'll get a truly great shave out of it, and you'll always have that smooth shave and soft skin. That's harrys.com/CoachNick to have all of your shaving needs delivered right to your door, and you'll have a shave as smooth as a crossover step back, pull up, swish. Let's move on to the Cavaliers, because they just added another piece, and we're talking about whether or not the Warriors can be threatened. And Kevin Love is back. He looked pretty good, didn't he?
Yeah, I thought he looked great. He's back early as far as the timetable went, which I think is great. That must mean, whatever surgery they did really was minor. Minor knee surgery is kind of a tricky term.
Right.
B, he must be feeling good. And he must have been performing really well in the non-contact stuff. And he looked spry. It didn't seem like he was favoring the knee at all, and that's huge. And then when you consider they also just got J.R. Smith back, they basically just added 2 starting level players, one a superstar level player or close to it, right before the playoffs. This is like almost like the trade deadline for them, because they went so long without those 2 guys. Now it'll be interesting to see when they get Korver back. I'm assuming they bring Korver off the bench.
Yeah.
I want to see what this, because they're going to have a ton of shooting. I mean, they could run a lineup out there with like KYRIE, J.R. Smith, Korver, Kevin Love, and Channing Frye. I mean, that could be incredible.
I'm sorry. Did you say LeBron or not in there?
I didn't. I said Kyrie Irving. Now that they would probably run that lineup with LeBron. I know that they really like this lineup they were running the other day. It was LeBron, RJ, Channing Frye, J.R. Smith, and who was the other guy? I can't remember. But there was another shooter out there for some reason. Maybe it was Shumpert.
Yeah.
It was just guys spotting up around the perimeter and LeBron making things happen. And we've talked about LeBron's ability to throw these passes, how he creates gravity and space with his passing. And then the fact that he's now, shooting the lights out from 3 has really just opened the floor up. I think as of right this second, because, they'll turn up the defensive intensity, I think right now they have to be the favorites to win the title.
Yeah.
Depending on, if KD comes back and KD is KD, then I think it goes right back to the Warriors. But the question marks with KD, to me, make the Cavs the favorite.
For sure. Now, the thing I liked about Kevin Love coming back was they're doing a lot of high post offense with LeBron on the elbow and doing a high post split where KYRIE hits LeBron at the elbow and then goes and screens for Kevin Love, which I don't really picture in my mind them doing a lot this year. And I think they did it some last year, but it's always a really good idea to get your three best players involved on the same side in some sort of action. And Kyrie would pin down and Love curl in the basket once. Love broke back door another time. It was open. And then we saw Love sprint down and actually, we hadn't seen him do that in a long time, is sprint down and get like a little guy on him who's probably the first guy back on defense, pin him under the basket, and then LeBron throws a 40-foot pass to him for an under the basket shot. And so those are the signs that Kevin Love is doing well and it feels good now, which is probably big because everybody else is banged up, a little bit slow. He's had rehab and he's fresh. And so we're going to see them moving back in. So I'm really encouraged by that. And, obviously the more you see LeBron James at the high post, the better they're going to be. Just tremendous action they can get out of the horns or out of high post splits. Yeah,
the other thing is what team has two guys that can throw 40-foot passes like Kevin Love and LeBron? And, when those two are out on the court together, we've seen it time and time again. They really leverage that. They use the full length of the court on every defensive rebound. That's the other thing about having Love out there is that when he gets a rebound, when he turns, he's looking to push the ball up court. And that's so huge for this team because – Ty Lue said this last year when he took over, that they wanted to play faster. They didn't really play faster. But I think what he meant was we want to take our opportunities to score in transition when they're available. Not that we want to get out and run, but we want to take them when they're there. And having a guy that can throw a 90-foot pass and, on a dime is pretty crazy.
Yeah, and very little wind up. It just, with Love, it's just a flick of the wrist. It's really one of those fun things to watch when he does it. It's very rare. That Wes Unseld influence from his dad's days. Just really impressive stuff. So should we take some questions?
Yeah, let's do it.
Well, I grabbed one from earlier by Ray518 who asked, Coach, can you explain the Cavs' problems on defense? Let me throw this to you, Dave. What do you think?
I think there's a couple of things, right? I think that they're not trying as hard on defense right now. I think that's part of it. KYRIE kind of, they all take a step back during the regular season. I think that this is like LeBron's sort of MO at this point. He likes to ratchet it up in the playoffs. I think he actually ratchets it up for stretches. Like if it's a close game, 4 minutes left, well, he's going to take the game over. Mm-hmm. And I think he's, we've talked about this. He might be playing 40 minutes a night, but how many of those minutes is he really playing? He's playing like maybe 8, right. Really hard. You know what I mean? And so I think that that's a big reason. I think it's an effort thing. They're just trying to get by, and I think they want the 1 seed, but their shooting is getting them there. They've set a team record. They set a team record a few games ago for most threes made in a season. So they're banking on the threes during the regular season. And I think that once the playoffs come around, you'll see them lock down a little bit more. The other thing is, outside of LeBron, who do they have? Who would you put on the second best player of the other team? Because Shumpert is not really a good defender.
Right.
Kyrie Irving has potential, but he gambles a little bit too much. J.R. Smith, I guess, is the second best defender that they've got.
Or Shumpert's probably the guy you trust the most. You're right. It is an issue, and that could be a problem. But it just frustrates me because they just turn on and off when they want to, and you're not supposed to get away with that, but they do. And, it's certainly not there's no teaching moments there that I could use for anybody at any other level. Just screw around, don't play so hard. Oh, all of a sudden, okay, we got a couple stops in the fourth quarter, win the game. But that's what they do. And we know that they're going to ratchet it up. And, but I don't know if they have that next level of defense that they can actually play and stop middle penetration and really, stay out of trouble on that end, against the top, Spurs or the Warriors. So that's where it's going to get interesting because if they don't get that handled, better, then they're going to win one game in the finals.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially if the Warriors are at full strength, with their switchability. I think that's going to be tough. So yeah, let's get some more questions coming.
All right, I got another one. I got Triviman17, or you have one?
No, go ahead.
All right, Triviman17 asks, how much noise do you think the Bucks can make in the playoffs? And this is an interesting question because the Bucks are, completely up and down. I don't think that they're going to make much noise at all. Do you?
Well, so they've got to make the playoffs first.
Right.
That's the big thing, right? And as it stands right now, they are the 7th seed. But we've got basically a 3-way tie almost for 7, 8, and 9. So 2 of the Bucks, Pistons, and Heat are going to make the playoffs as a 7 and 8 seed. I think that if I'm the Bucks, I mean, look, if I'm anyone, I don't want to play the Cavs. But between the Bucks, Pistons, and Heat, I think the Bucks match up with the Cavs the best. I just think that they've got these funky guys. They're all arms. They can't really shoot, although they've got a couple of shooters. Middleton being back is huge for them.
Right.
But I think the Giannis factor is huge for them. Yeah. I really think that that's important. So I don't know. I mean, what is noise? Is winning 2 games against the Cavs in the first round, is that making noise? Because I think that that's kind of their ceiling. If they play Boston, I think they maybe win 1 or 2 games.
Yeah.
But I think that that's their ceiling. But that's good for a young team. You know what I mean? Like we thought the Pistons would build on last season's or last postseason's sort of success. It was one of the most impressive 4-0 sweeps I've ever seen for the losing team, right? Like they looked good and they seemed to sort of figure things out, but it didn't turn out that way. Mm-hmm. But with a young team like the Bucks, what you hope is that this is a part of the process. They go to the playoffs this year. That's a milestone. It's important.
Right.
If they win a game or 2, fantastic.
Well,
and then they get to come back next year and build on that.
And by the way, what's too bad about this was last year should have been the year they got in the playoffs and kind of built on it from the year before that. And so that's really what kind of got all screwed up, because they had that the Bulls series and they were competitive. It was feisty. They got some good experience, and then they fell off the train. And so they've set themselves back a little bit, and they're kind of starting over with that playoff experience, thing that they're going to get this year if they make it. So that's what's really frustrating. But either way, I'm looking very forward to having a Giannis playoff series and seeing what he can really do in that spotlight, and if he can come through, because he could turn in those triple-double monster games and really help control the game. And they could be a little scary, but yeah, I would see if they get in. If they're the 8th seed, they win a game, maybe 2, and who knows, if they get 7th or whatever, then that makes it a little more interesting. But they're just sort of a little frustrating. They ripped off a nice winning streak with some good wins in there, but then they it's up and down. For some reason, Kidd just can't get any consistency with these guys.
I think that strong point guard play is important for a young team. And I think that when you've got a guy like Giannis who is, he's learning the position basically, they're going to go up and down with him. And when he's great, they're going to be good. And when he's good, they're going to be decent. And when he's bad, they're going to stink. And I think that that's what you've got. But the bigger story to me in the East is the Miami Heat.
Yeah.
To come from 10-30 to what they are now, which is, let me pull up their record. They are now 34-30.
34 and what?
34-36.
Yeah, it's kind of remarkable. They're still not at 500. It just seems weird because they've been winning for so long since that start.
Mm-hmm. But I think that if they're somehow the 7th seed, that Boston or Washington, whoever winds up as a 2nd seed, I don't think either one of those teams will want to see the Miami Heat. They play so hard. Whiteside is a legitimate rim protector. Goran Dragic has been incredible. They just got guys who can play basketball, and Spo is such a good coach. I've been going back and forth. I've been saying Scotty Brooks for most of the year.
Yeah.
I think if they make the 7th seed, you got to start leaning probably towards Spo, just because they don't have any talent. This is a team that should be tanking. They don't have their pick the next year, so they should be tanking.
Right.
But they're not, and he's getting the most out of these guys, and they're cast-offs, and I don't know. It's kind of crazy what he's doing.
Yeah, Deion Waiters is doing his thing, and it's been good. He really has sort of figured some things out, and it's remarkable what he's done there. And you're right. He moves ahead of Scott Brooks, but then I still feel like D'Antoni, as far as Coach of the Year, probably hovers above them, just because they're doing so well as well after coming off of such a terrible year last year. So it'll be great.
The narrative. We talked about this. We've talked
Yeah.
about this before. The narrative. The narrative is that Houston has good players.
Right.
obviously Miami doesn't have anyone that approaches Harden, but I just think I think that narrative stuff matters, especially for those types of awards.
Oh yeah, and when Dragic is playing at his best, it's not like Harden. He's more like a Tony Parker, but you know what I mean. Sure. Like, and he's not as good as Harden, but he is some reasonable version of that in a way that, like, we can't sleep on him, and even though we have, and he's been up and down, and his career has been an interesting tale. So. But he really can put out so much pressure on the defense in a similar way that Harden can. And now that they got Wade out of there this beginning of this year, and he's finally had a chance to do what he likes to do. Look, he's 20 points a game, 6 assists. He's shooting lights out from 3 now, which is also a little bit of a difference for him too. So, they have a guy.
Yeah, I mean, he can play, and he's been good for Whiteside this year. I mean. Whiteside has been pretty impressive, at least statistically. Now how important he's been to what they're doing as far as winning games, that's a little bit debatable. But I think that, again, they are a team that I would not want to play in the first round if I'm anyone except for Cleveland. I think Cleveland probably runs them off the floor, but I don't see any of these other teams really wanting to play them.
For sure.
So we got a question from user don't know what to put. What do we think of teams resting players on the road? This is something you and I talked quite a bit about on the podcast. I think if your sports science folks say, hey, this guy needs to rest, I think you rest him. I don't care if it's if NBC gets a Sunday game for some reason, right? Like, and they're gonna play Round Ball Rock and have Marv Albert announce it. Exactly. I don't care if that's the case. If sports science guys, if they say to rest him, if your training staff says this guy needs rest him.
Yeah.
Like we Adam Silver came out over the last couple of days and kind of said the same thing. The resting is going to happen. We got to find a way to add extra days to the schedule so that we don't have as many back-to-backs and things like that. I think until we solve the scheduling problems, we all should just be okay with it. Because I'd rather a guy miss one game than have an overuse injury and miss consecutive games or weeks.
I hear you. I agree, but I also, man, it sucks if you're going to work, your all year long to save enough money to bring your family to a game and LeBron doesn't play. That just sucks balls. It really is a terrible thing. So, you're right. I think the solution is less of the resting the players wholesale, but then let's get this season under control better. Extend it, get rid of some of those preseason games, and let the rest happen that way, so that they could play almost every game or as many games as they can. I think that might be a better solution in my mind either way, but certainly something we've been talking about a lot, and everyone's thinking about it, so they got to figure that out. Should we talk a little bit about Lonzo Ball and where he fits best?
Sure.
It's a question we got from Jigglypuff asks, or he says, I think that Lonzo fits the Lakers the best, which is interesting because I was on a Lakers podcast earlier today. We were talking about that where I don't know. It feels like you put Jordan Clarkson on the bench or you have a 6-man role, which I think he could be a really great 6-man, and then you let Russell and Ball play as big guards, kind of like harking back to Penny Hardaway and Nick Anderson. The Magic. Yeah,
I mean, I think that's one way to do it. If Ball's shooting is gonna stay at this level and he can play off ball, which I don't know if he's gonna be able to play off ball. But he's a 69% free throw shooter, which is what bugs me about how high his 3-point percentage is. So I think it's interesting to have 2 big guards, but Ball's shot creation is not very good. He's a great playmaker, especially defensively. I think he's got good instincts. I think he will develop. But yeah, I mean, I know the Lakers fans want him to, like, there's a narrative driving this as well. Like, he's an LA kid, he's going to UCLA. Hey, bring him, keep him home. But if you draft Lonzo Ball, you're going to have problems in the locker room with D'Angelo Russell. D'Angelo Russell wants the ball in his hands.
Yeah.
Plain and simple. He's a point guard. And Lonzo Ball thinks he's a point guard. So there is likely to be some issues there. And not to continue to bring up LeVar Ball, as
right.
someone just asked what we think about LeVar, but the LeVar Ball thing is legit. I really think, he's not going to tank Lonzo's stock, because I think Lonzo has been amazing, right? Like, the guy works hard. I've never heard anything bad about the guy himself, right? And that's important. Like, NBA teams, they ask around, they're looking around. And from my friends that follow the draft stuff, I haven't heard anything bad about Lonzo. LeVar is not tainting Lonzo. But, the media narrative, right? Like, you're in LA, you've got LeVar, he's going to talk a lot. He's trying to get a TV show, which is why he's doing all this stuff. And so I wonder, will that get on people's nerves? I mean, D'Angelo Russell has, to me, the most potential on that team to get to that star level of play. You don't want to have problems with that player, right? Like, you don't want to bring in someone who's going to be a conflict to that guy, or even knock his confidence out. So I think that's my concern for them. Not so much about fit on the court; it's more about fit in the locker room.
Yeah. Oh, I hear you. That's interesting. So, I would say that Ingram, I think, has that star potential, maybe more than Russell. But either way, if they both had some semblance of that, then that's pretty good. They'll have some. That's good talent to have around as they build. So we'll have to see how that plays out. Do we have any other questions that we want to talk about, or solve any other problems for the NBA, if you will?
Well, we could get rid of the charge. Right.
Oh yeah. I mean, if you're, by the way, again, we talk about this ad nauseum, but you're watching these NCAA games, it's like the refereeing over and over again is just really terrible. And it was heartbreaking to watch the game today. I was just watching that they lost. What game was I watching? And it was Rhode Island. Rhode Island loses on a charge call where, and they had a great camera angle. And if you look at the vectors, this is what I don't understand, why they can't train referees to do this better. The offensive player's vector is going like toward the baseline, toward the drifting away from the basket. The defensive player takes the charge and he falls toward the basket.
Right.
It's a 45-degree angle difference of the vectors where it's clearly not knocking him down into that direction. That's not a charge, and yet they fall for it. It cost them the game, and it was brutal.
To me, sliding in front of a guy to draw a charge is not a basketball play. You're not defending the ball. And the other thing with these refs is, I know if someone hits the floor, if you have an offensive player going into a defensive player and one guy hits the floor, usually the defensive player falls down, right? Because he's trying to draw a charge. They're calling a charge or a block no matter what, even if there's no foul, and you should just let them play.
Right.
I think that's the bigger thing, and that's got to stop. And the other thing about the NCAA. I've been on record as saying I don't really like college basketball. I think the coaches overcoach. I think the referees are not great. But the refereeing thing you can fix. The NCAA needs to take over the refereeing. They need to say, hey, look, if you're going to be a conference, or if you're going to play in the NCAA, we want to have one group of referees rather than each conference having refs. I mean, I get it, because ACC probably has better refs than West Coast Conference, because they can pay them more money. And the ACC doesn't want to lose those refs, but for the good of the game, let's kind of homogenize this and get a consistent thing.
Right.
And then next, I think that someone just asked, do you believe charges could be reviewed? I think they should be reviewed, but I don't want to stop the game. I want them to be reviewed in real time as they happen. And if the ref, again, just get rid of the charge. And none of this matters. If you just get rid of the charge, people aren't going to do it. It'll take them, one practice to get over the idea of sliding in front of a guy for a charge.
Right. So I mean, you keep the offensive foul, but just get rid of the charge play. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting.
Especially in the lane. I mean, if a guy the rare charge that you get on the wing.
Yeah, or at a half court
Right. Those are usually legit charges.
Yeah.
But the in the lane stuff where the guy slides, the help defender slides over, especially, like they just call it so often after the ball's been picked up, which to me, that means it's continuation. I just think.
But by the way, there's a great point made here where the charge is the only, and this is the point I've made it as well, is the charge is the only advantage defense has to fight for, have a chance to stop the offense. A great comment there. But if you have the offensive foul notion where like pushing off and using your chicken wings and whatever, like that's still a deterrent. It's not the only thing that helps the defense. But it is a thing. It's hard enough to stop teams as it is. Now you're going to not let them have a charge, and so suddenly you can just, at will, just drive the basket, knowing that either you're going to get the call for free throws or nothing else will happen. It's tough. Or maybe I guess a blocked shot could be the one thing. It would certainly put a new premium on big men because you'd have to have a guy that could block a shot if you can't take the charge. It's a conundrum. I don't know. I wish they'd simply just be better at calling them. I wish they could somehow train that better either way. But you're right. There's a danger issue as well that's troubling with a lot of these plays as well that needs to be solved. So I don't know if we can solve that question tonight.
Yeah, probably not. I mean, what I will say, having watched, this is the most college basketball I've watched since this time last year.
Yeah.
I still think that they should adopt FIBA rules. I think that they should go to the 4 10-minute quarters. The women's game has done that. I think that they should advance the ball after timeouts.
Yeah.
At least in the last 2 minutes.
You can't inbound the ball in the backcourt, I believe, ever.
Right. Yeah. No, you can't.
Yeah.
And I think they should. What else was there? Oh, no live ball timeouts. Right. So let's say you're a team that does a press and you get a trap, and I saw this yesterday, and they're approaching a 10-second violation in the backcourt, and then they call a timeout. It's been 9 seconds. They call a timeout, and now on the inbound they get to reset that 10 seconds.
Yeah.
It's insane. So what you're saying is we are taking every advantage that the defense gets for itself, every advantage it earns. We're going to take those away. We're going to give them, we're going to give the offense this tool. And I think that's garbage. And someone brought up flow of the game here in the Periscope chat. Absolutely. It's a much more aesthetically appealing game. It also gets them down to about, 2 hours or less.
Right.
Because you don't have as many stoppages. I would also get rid of some of these timeouts.
The timeouts are horrible. It's ridiculous.
It leads to overcoaching. We saw tonight with the Rhode Island loss to Oregon. He called Rhode Island's coach Dan Hurley calls a timeout with 1 minute and 12 seconds left in a tie game. Okay, his team has the ball. They're coming up court, and he calls a timeout with 1 minute and 12 left. Well, it happens to be their last timeout. So this guy's overthinking this situation.
Yeah.
Look, you've got like 4 possessions left in the game. Okay. So hopefully you score on this one. If not, come down, get a stop, and then maybe take your timeout.
Right.
But when he needed a timeout, he didn't have it.
Yeah, and then meanwhile, tie game coming back, the Oregon had a 2-for-1, and they wouldn't have had to rush it. They just get a 2-for-1 shot, and they don't, and instead get a 35-footer from the top of the key, and he buries it for the win. Like, that was also crazy, like how that happened, because they didn't really run anything. They like ran the clock down almost. It was very strange. So for all the overcoaching, then you get like no coaching in a way that, and then I guess that was how it's supposed to be. The players decided the game, but man, it was a very strange ending to what was a good game. And by the way, speaking of overcoaching, not coaching, whenever, Coach K is going down in the second round to South Carolina, and the game is over pretty much. They're down by they're down by 6 with 26 seconds to go. So we could talk about Coach K and his program on a different date, but I think it's time to wrap this thing up, Dave.
Yeah, I think so. This was a pretty good one, and we might have covered as much ground as we've ever covered in a podcast, so that's pretty good.
Yeah, who knew? It was a really good podcast. Definitely, thanks for everyone that coming by on Periscope and giving us some questions, and then following us and listening to us on the podcast as well, audio-wise. So remember, every Monday we'll be here, and in the playoffs we'll probably do some more. So we'll be all over the place: Periscope, Facebook, YouTube, live, wherever you can find us.
All over. And for you guys that are just watching us on Periscope, even if you don't download the podcast, go ahead to iTunes and give us a review and rate it, because it really helps new people find the podcast, which helps get us doing this more often.
Yeah. Rate it, give us even a star would be nice, or a few stars would be nice. And then, hey, listen to it too. Give us a listen on the audio version too. Maybe even stay for the whole thing. So, well, either way, thanks for joining us. Thank you, Dave, for coming on the show again for another great episode. And don't forget, sports fans, at B-Ball Breakdown, we're not a channel, we're a conversation. You in? Are you in, Dave?
Yes, I am.